I live in a really small countryside town. The population's only a few thousand, and the nearest city is a couple hours away. Most of the people that live here are quite close. With there being so few people around, everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew everything that was going on in town as well. At the time I was in high school and had a best friend named Chris that I'd hang out with pretty much every day. During mid-fall, there was a lot of talk about this empty farmhouse in the town that people were keen on exploring. I was never one to do those sorts of things, but Chris was. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't the least bit curious. Supposedly, this farmhouse had been left behind by the owner years ago, left to rot on the edge of town for the past 5 years. Being in high school, the rumors of it spread like wildfire. People were telling stories about it, daring others to explore it. It was on one weekend night that Chris brought it up to me as well. We had nothing else to do really, and Chris seemed really excited to see what everyone was talking about. After finding a couple flashlights, we got in the car and drove to the farmhouse. We only knew which road it was on, but it wasn't very hard to find. From the road, you could see the rotting house in the distance. We couldn't find the driveway up to it, though. It was likely it had long since been overgrown, might not even exist anymore. We parked on the road and started walking through the field towards this house. It was almost 1 a.m., so the moon was lighting up the field just enough for us to navigate through. As we got closer, it almost felt like the night got quieter and quieter around us until we reached its area. The house had weeds infesting the whole yard and vines growing through the wooden panels on the outside. Chris led the way, walking around to the front where the door was missing. That gave us easy enough access inside. We stepped in and started walking through the rooms, looking at the trash on the ground and the decaying interior. It made both of us wonder why it had been abandoned to begin with. After a minute or two, though, we'd seen everything on the first floor. We moved up to the second. It was much darker upstairs. There were no windows to let in the moonlight. We both turned on our flashlights and shined them around. There were only 2 rooms up there, one on the left side of the hallway and the other on the right side. Chris went up to the left, finding that the door was locked. While he was struggling with that door, I went over to the other room. It happened to be unlocked. It was entirely empty, having mold covering the ceiling and nothing more. There was a single window with slabs of wood nailed across it. Curious, I went up to it. Why would they need to block an upstairs window? I crouched down to investigate and looked in between the 2 slabs to see what was outside. Maybe it had access to the roof or something. It didn't, though. This was just an ordinary window facing the field we'd come from. As I looked out into the moonlit grass, I saw a figure walking toward the farmhouse, not too far away. I left the window and whispered to Chris that someone was coming. My heartbeat was already speeding up. I think it was seeing the figure being all alone that really freaked me out, knowing this was not another group of kids just exploring this place. Chris looked nervous too. He walked over to the window to see for himself, but we immediately stopped at the sound of footsteps entering the house downstairs. We froze in place, standing in the middle of the empty room, too scared to even take a step and risk being found. The person walked slowly through the first floor, going to the stairs and beginning to walk up. Both Chris and I stared at the open doorway, listening as the footsteps approached the top. They started coming even closer until the large figure of a man appeared in front of us. He was facing the other way, unlocking the locked door as he stood in that dark hallway just 4 or 5 feet away from us. I held my breath in my hands, hoping he would not turn around. When he opened the door, I immediately locked eyes with another man who had been waiting inside that room. Our gaze was broken as the man went into the room and closed the door behind him. We heard them whispering immediately after. Chris and I made our move, sprinting into the hallway and down the stairs. We heard the door swing open and footsteps charging out behind us. We fled the house and ran for the field. We didn't stop until we got to the car, driving away as fast as we could. The whole ride back to my house, neither of us said a single word. We were both just in shock, taking everything in. We had no idea what was going on in that house, or who those men were. But out of fear of getting in trouble for trespassing, we did not call the police. We were stupid to have even gone there in the first place. I won't defend any of my actions, but I feel like there was something more sinister going on at that farmhouse. A month after that incident, the house was bought and torn down with no reason given. Whether or not something was really going on in there, we'll never be able to find out now. that's for sure. This happened to me 3 years ago when I'd moved into a small home. It was only a mile from where I was living before, so I wasn't very unfamiliar with this place at all. It was on the side of town I didn't really go to often though, due to it having a record of crimes and just an overall bad reputation. At the time, I wasn't in a good financial place, so I just had to go with the cheaper places I could afford. That just so happened to be this area. The day I moved in, I didn't talk to or really even see anyone else. I just moved my stuff from the U-Haul into my new place. On the second day, I started the unpacking process by moving the boxes and furniture into the rooms they would be in. Once I got to moving my office furniture, though, I saw something out my window that really caught my attention. There was a man, young and about 25 years old, just standing in my driveway. I watched as he looked at the house and walked into the yard. He was trying to look into my windows from afar. Getting uncomfortable, I left my own window and went downstairs to confront him. When I opened the door and looked outside, though, he was already gone, not in my yard or driveway, nor even on any of the sidewalks. It was like he just completely disappeared. I waited to see if he'd come back, but shrugged it off and got back to what I was doing. Yeah, it was weird, but I didn't know what exactly I was supposed to do about that. I got my office set up, then went out to get some lunch before getting back to work on the bedroom. By about 8 p.m., I was pretty tired, but I kept on with it for as long as I could manage. Once 10 p.m. rolled around, I was just done for the night. The house was still a mess, but I left it as is, turning off all the lights and climbing into bed. It only took me a few minutes to fall asleep. At some point in the night, I woke up. I rolled my head over and looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. I rolled back over and tried to close my eyes, but a muffled sound woke me right back up. I lifted my head and listened in again. I could hear a faint sound coming from downstairs. It sounded like something was being dragged across the floor. Still in disbelief, I sat up and listened even more intently. A few seconds later, a similar sound came again. I stood from my bed and walked over to the bedroom door, opening it and looking down the hallway. As soon as I opened the door, all the sounds stopped. I walked out into the hall and over to the staircase. I went down a few steps and looked over the railing, but I didn't see anything. The house was still completely quiet. When I got to the last step, I flicked on the light. At first, everything looked okay, nothing missing and nobody inside. But then I noticed something out of place. All the furniture and boxes that were against the walls had been pushed away, and behind them there were several carved-out portions in the wall. I felt blood rush from my face as I realized that someone had to have broken into my house, and may even still be inside. I ran up to my room and called for help. The house remained quiet the whole time. What's more unsettling is the cops couldn't figure out how the intruder had gotten inside or back outside once they arrived. Nor did they figure out why the person broke in. The only idea now is that it looks like they were looking for something in the walls. I don't know what, but there was nothing else to go off of. I think back to that man I saw standing outside my home and wonder if he was the one that had broken in. Even 3 years later, though, I still know nothing else about what happened that night. Something really bizarre happened to me a couple of years ago. I got a new cell phone and a new number. I'd been needing a new phone for a while, and my previous service was not any good at all. After switching over, though, I soon started to get these very strange phone calls and texts as well. The first was a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Obviously, I didn't really recognize any of the new numbers after getting the phone. But when I answered, a man I didn't know spoke and asked me why I had not been returning his calls. I realized he must have the wrong number and I told him so. For some strange reason, though, when I did, he didn't believe me. After that, I just hung up on him. Sometime later, I received a text message from a different number. This text just said something like, "Hey, call me when you get the chance." Once more, I didn't know the number. I replied asking who it was, and they responded with the name of a person I didn't know. I told them that they had the wrong number. This person didn't respond. Over the next week or so, I got at least 10 different text messages and 10 different phone calls as well. Most of them were from different phone numbers, but some were the same. I responded to most of them, saying they had the wrong number. I realized that most likely, the previous person that had my phone number must not have told their contacts they changed it. They must have had a lot of friends or something. I answered another one of these random calls out of curiosity. There was another man I didn't know. I told him he had the wrong number, like usual, and that I'd recently gotten this new one. The man on the other end said he didn't understand. I started to explain to him that I'd gotten a new phone and new service, but he just hung up on me. I put up with these random texts and calls for the next few days. After a certain point, I just started ignoring everything. Some people I had already told they had the wrong number, but they continued to message me anyway. It was kind of annoying. I even considered asking to change numbers. I got a text from someone who had already texted me multiple times. They said I needed to cut the crap and nobody was buying my new number nonsense. They said my life could be made miserable if I didn't start cooperating. When I read that, I was thinking to myself, who on earth had this number before me? I didn't respond. I wasn't really sure what to do. I received another text shortly after saying they would find me, and I couldn't hide forever. By this point, threatening texts began coming from 2 or 3 different numbers. After these sorts of messages went on for a few days, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the police and also went to get a new phone number. I told the cops my whole situation. They told me I should get a new number, and they would start an investigation. I did get a new number, and after that, I wasn't bothered again. I also never heard anything more about those people. Who were they? Why were they so threatening to whoever was supposed to own this number? I still wonder why I got those texts at all.